Good afternoon, students. I'm sorry that this afternoon you are supposed to have ruminant husbandry, but there's been a problem with the connectivity by your tutor for that module. Hence, instead of just dispersing you or letting you off, I thought of taking over so that we continue looking at vegetable production. You may recall that last week we started looking at vegetable production and we looked at so many aspects under that module. So just as a way of recapping, allow me to share with you my screen so that we can follow the slides and we take it up from there. So last week we did look at this, how to classify vegetables. Okay, we said that basically vegetables are classified into 5 groups. And the first one that we did look at was the part of the vegetable that is consumed. Okay, where we discussed that if you are eating the leaf, then such a vegetable is called a leaf vegetable. If you are eating the root of that vegetable, then such a vegetable is called a root vegetable. If you are eating the fruit, such as in tomato, then such a vegetable is known as a fruit vegetable. Similarly, vegetables can also be classified according to season or area of production. Here we did look at what we called temperate vegetables. Okay, these that are grown during the cool season. And we gave examples of such vegetables, such as cabbage, garlic, onion, radish, spinach, lettuce, potato, and carrots. Equally, there are those that are grown during the warm season. And these are known as warm season vegetables. Then the other classification is the botanical or taxonomic classification. That is, when we look at botanical or taxonomic classification of vegetables, here basically we are looking at the family under which such a vegetable falls, or the family to which such a vegetable belongs. We also look at the scientific name of such a vegetable. So when we do that, that is known as botanical or taxonomic classification. And here we give examples of families, then the scientific name, as well as the common names. Then we also looked at the 4th classification, where we said that the frequency, how often is that vegetable cultivated? Is it oftenly cultivated? Okay. That is regularly cultivated vegetable, or that is occasionally cultivated. And we did give related examples. Lastly, we did look at the classification of vegetables according to their maturity time, how these are their growth habit, as well as the way that these vegetables are harvested. There are those vegetables that have short growing period, while others have long growing period. Okay. So that is, those are some of the things that we talked about last week. Okay. We also did look at those vegetables that have the climbing growth habit. Okay. For example, if you are growing spongy gourd or cucumber, and you put a stake near the plant, the stem or the vine of that plant will start climbing that stick that you are put near. And those are known as climbing vegetable types. Then we have those like watermelons, muskmelon, and some cucumbers. They fall under this as well, where they have vines or stems that creep on the ground. Then we also looked at indigenous vegetables. Indigenous vegetables, and these are vegetables that are grown in the hot climates, like here in Africa. They are known as native vegetables or indigenous vegetables. Okay. Then the other type are the exotic types, those that are associated with the Western countries. Okay. They originate in areas with cool season climate, such as temperate regions. We also looked at types of vegetable gardens. So this was just reminding us, recapping, looking at what we did discuss last time. Okay, so I'll just take you through. These are the things that we did talk about. And I did explain what these look like kitchen garden, market garden, truck garden. And I remember here, maybe just as a way of reminding ourselves what truck gardening is. Okay, someone said, no, actually, suppose you are delivering the farm produce or the vegetable products. You are delivering them using other means than a truck. Then it means that, how do you classify that? Actually, what I said is that the name truck here does not mean that you are using the truck. No. Okay. There are so many means of transporting vegetables going to the market. You can use a bicycle, a wheelbarrow, or any other means. You can use a van or a truck. Okay. So the name truck gardening does not suggest that you are using a truck. No. As we know it, a truck, a vehicle, no. But this type of gardening is similar to market gardening. But the difference is that the vegetables are produced relatively in large quantities for far away, distant markets. Okay, so when you are producing vegetables for distant markets, then that is truck gardening. We also looked at commercial gardening, processing gardening, and vegetable forcing. And lastly, we also did talk about producing vegetables mainly for seed production, so that seeds are extracted. And then these seeds are well packed and sold on the market to eventual or sold to the farmers. And that is known as seed production, vegetable seed production. Then we also looked at organic vegetable gardening, where I reminded you of vegetable farming that we had talked about before, where we said that you do not necessarily need to use synthetic chemicals to produce these vegetables. And that is known as organic vegetable gardening. Then we also, I think this must have been the last thing that we talked about, where we said that you can produce vegetables under a modified environment. Okay, where that environment where vegetables are produced is controlled. like in the greenhouses. Okay, so under a greenhouse, I hope most of us, if not all, we know what a greenhouse is. And in a greenhouse, the environment is controlled. And there are certain vegetables that may be grown under such an environment. Maybe I should have said that actually, when you have a greenhouse, you can grow vegetables out of season. What do I mean growing vegetables out of season? You are growing vegetables when they're not supposed to be grown. Now, what makes it possible for you to be able to produce these vegetables? Because you are able to control the environment within that structure. That structure known as a greenhouse. Now, today, I want us to look at, I think we even looked at partly this, features of an ideal vegetable garden, where we talked about proper sunlight. We know that vegetables are sun-loving, and therefore, they will grow their best if the sunlight hours are 6 to 8 in a day. They need that. Okay, you may recall when we are looking at plant physiology, we talked about sunlight and why sunlight is important. Okay, so the exposure of these vegetables to enough sunlight is of paramount importance. Assured irrigation. You know very well that you cannot grow a crop without water. You cannot grow a vegetable without water, because vegetables need regular watering. So the watering of vegetables should be quite regular, okay? Because if there is erratic supply of water, you find that there will be a lot of problems that will be shown by these vegetables, such as poor growth, stunting, improper fruit setting, and some other various problems that may be encountered there or may be observed in your vegetables. Similarly, there is need for the soil to be fertile. Yes, you know, there I was telling you that people sometimes say that you as a farmer, you need to feed the soil so that the soil can feed your crop. So it is very important that the soils are fertile so that these soils will be able to support plant growth. Okay. Yeah, some of you are asking for notes. Yeah, I think those that have been with me, you know, I do not give notes. As soon as I finish the lesson, I give the notes. Normally what I love to be there with the students, because there's a tendency with the students sometimes that if you give them notes in advance, they don't attend the classes. Okay. However, since these are your notes, these notes will be given to you. I will upload them in your group and you receive them. Welcome. We also looked at proper drainage. It's very important, as we can recall when we are looking at soil science and water science. We did talk about soil drainage. And what we mean by this, we know that water that properly drains through the soil is that water that is taken up by these plants. water that is absorbed by the root hairs. Okay, water that is needed for plant growth. So it is very important that the soils are properly drained, because those soils that are not properly drained, they easily get waterlogged. And when there's waterlogging, meaning that all the air spaces, all the pore spaces, that is spaces between soil particles, all those spaces between the soil particles where air is supposed to be, there is water, and air is driven out of the soil, thereby making that soil air deficient. And if the soil is air deficient, then such a crop will not carry out respiration properly. Another thing that may be required to have there for an ideal garden is a manure pit, where one may make compost manure. Compost manure is simply organic manure that is made from remains of vegetation. So organic manure, or rather compost manure, is simply manure that is made from vegetation remains. For example, you are weeding in your garden, and there are a lot of weeds that you have pulled out of the garden. Where do you throw those weeds? Probably you may have been pruning some of vegetable leaves or stems or branches that may not be necessary. And where do you throw them? So it is important that some of these material that is waste material, you get them and throw them in the pit. And when you throw these in the pit, you can use them for composting, okay, for making organic manure that will eventually be used again in your garden. So it is very important that you have what we call a manure pit. Sometimes some people will call this as a compost pit. We also did look at protecting your garden from stray animals so that they don't just move in there to destroy your crop, such as those domesticated animals, such as chickens. Also, we may have wild animals, such as squirrels and some other wild animals that may wander around and start eating your vegetables. There is also need to have a store as well as a packing house. Now, the store and the packing house should be in the center of the vegetable garden. Why? So that it is easily accessed, so that it is easily approached. This store is used for keeping implements, different tools, as well as inputs such as herbicides, fertilizers, etc., etc. So you can be keeping chemicals there in the store. You can be keeping implements or tools such as hand hoes, rakes, and so on. Keeping also fertilizers within the store. You can also be keeping seeds for planting. For later planting, you keep those in the store. Okay? There is also need for a packing house, just in case this packing house, sometimes you may call it a sorting shed, where after harvesting, if you are to grade your vegetables, where do you do it? Okay? Most often than not, you find that the sorting out of these harvested vegetable products is done in the open field within the garden. But now sometimes we should also be thinking in an advanced way, whereby you have a sorting house or packing house. Okay. Then the other thing that should be there are roads. Where do you pump for if you are going to weed, or you are going to apply fertilizer or to spray, and maybe you are pushing a wheelbarrow, or you have been harvesting your vegetables? Where do you pass? So there is a need to have roads and footpaths within that garden. Okay, these should occupy minimum space for the economy of transport. Okay, again, the size of the road or the footpath that you leave within the garden depends on what you want to pass on that path. Okay, if you want a vehicle to pass there on that road, or maybe someone is just walking, there should be a difference between a road where a vehicle passes because it's quite wide, okay, as compared to maybe you are pushing a wheelbarrow, or maybe an individual is passing there. So there should be roads, access roads within the vegetable garden. Access road within the vegetable garden. Very, very important. Okay. Okay. I'm in class. Then the other thing that should be there is the plan. You should have a plan. How are you going to plant your vegetables? Okay, probably here you may use what we call a crop rotation. Okay, now, as you think of that plan, how you are going to grow your vegetables, you remember I told you that you should have what we call a market survey. Find out from the market the type of vegetables that are required there. What type of vegetables do people want to buy? Okay, for example, if you went to the market and did a little survey and learned that there's a shortage of tomato. Tomatoes are in high demand. Then why not growing your tomatoes that are required on the market? Okay. If you learned that they require some onions, why not growing the onions? So it will be very important that you take a market survey before you can actually sit down and do your planning. Okay. The other thing that I want us to also look at is some of the agronomic practices that should be followed. And this is very important for anyone who wants to be successful in their gardening. What are some of those practices that we need to follow? One, the first one is planting time or the sowing time. When do you plant? Okay, and this may be related to the seasons that we talked about. There are certain vegetables that are cool season vegetables, while others are warm season vegetables. So you decide yourself when you are actually planting. So I'm sorry, students, for today, I think we call it a day. I am going to attend another meeting just now. Thank you very much for your presence, and we'll see you next week on Monday so that we can continue looking at vegetable production. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Thank you.